Welcome, everybody. We're here with a Rescue the Princess deck. So this is something that people demanded, so we thought we'd put one together. By we, I mean Andy. But so we have Rescue the Princess. Let's see how this works.
All right, so this is, probably one of my, the backside of Rescue the Princess is incredibly amazing, but it's so fragile to pull together that it's not like a really easy deck to pilot. So we're going to kind of go through it here. This deck I put together, there may be a couple cards that you could put in or out of this deck, but basically you're going to start with Rescue the Princess, which is deploy Detention block corridor with a Leia of ability less than 4, imprison there, docking bay 327, Yavin 4 docking bay, and Yavin 4 war room. While this side up, 8D8 Revolution, Death Star plans and Detention block control room cannot deploy to the Death Star. Cards that release captives are immune to sense and alter, and you cannot play Nabrin leads. Flip this card if Leia moves to the Yavin 4 war room. Place out of play if Leia is lost from the table. You may not play Death Star plans for the remainder of the game if it's out of play. So that's where we're starting. So we're starting with this site, the Detention block corridor, which is a 0-1 site for light side, 4 strain plus 1 hair, and whenever you release a captive, you can retrieve 1 force 4 if it's Leia. The Death Star docking bay, Yavin docking bay, and the war room. So the idea is Leia is supposed to be prisoned here, and you move her to the war room. This is the Leia you're going to start. This is from 3rd Anthology, Prisoner 2187. Power 4 ability 3. She deploys for 0 because she deploys only if Rescue the Princess is on table. So you start her. Forfeit of 6. She cannot be transferred while in prison, so you can't just put somebody to the Detention block corridor and take her out of prison, like IG-88, who can't be battled, and then remove her, and then your opponent just can never flip their objective, which is one of the problems before 3rd Anthology came out. She adds 2 to your 4 strains wherever she's at. And for the remainder of your game, your objective cannot be placed out of play. And if Leia is not on table, you flip your objective rather than place it out of play, which is another big problem that this deck had. Is as soon as Leia left the table before this Prisoner 2187, your objective would go out of play, defeating the purpose of rescuing the princess. So she's very good. We have 3 copies of her. Then a lot of people will just start the Signal and Echo Base Garrison. I'm heading for the Medical Frigate, which lets me deploy 3 effects that are deployed on table and always immune to alter. The effects that I'm going to deploy are going to be Insurrection, Staging Areas, and Your Insight Serves You Well. So Insurrection gives all your rebels, unique rebels of ability less than 3, forfeit plus 2, as well as you can deploy docking bays. Staging Area is Force Generations plus 1 at docking bays. You occupy plus 2 if you control. You're never going to use the other text on that. And then Insight lets you Dark Jedi or defense value -1, scanning crew 3,700 joined or 1 are canceled. But more importantly, you can place it into a lost pile and take an Endor Death Star 2 effect into hand. So you're going to start those. Your first thing you want to do is you're going to pull out your other 2 docking bays, Home 1 and Hoth. Hoth is the more important one because your Luke that you're playing is Commander Luke Skywalker, and he only deploys on Hoth. So once you get your docking bays out, you're trying to find the Signal or Echo Base Garrison. So between 2 Echo Base Garrisons and 3 copies of the Signal, you have effectively 5 copies of this card. You want to play Echo Base Garrison as soon as you possibly can, which deploys on table. T-47s are immune to attrition less than 4 or less than 6 if they're matching pilots aboard. Once during each of your turns, you can take a maintenance droid, Bacta Tank, Lone Rogue, Luke, Wedge, Zev, or Hobbie into hand. So the reason that you play this one is because you can pull your 8D8, who's a maintenance droid, and 8D8 deploys for 1. He cannot deploy to the Death Star because of your objective. 8D8 cannot deploy there. And what he does is Once during each of your turns, if he's with an imprisoned captive, which prisoner 2187 will be imprisoned here, you can draw Destiny. If Destiny is greater than 3, they're released. So that's how you're actually going to get Leia out of prison, is 8d8. And then Echo Base Garrison goes and finds 8d8. You have one other way of getting Leia out of prison, which is you can pull your Luke, your Hoth Luke, which is Commander Luke Skywalker. He's a leader. And what you can do is play Cell 2187. I actually run 2 copies of this just so you can find it, similar to Echo Base Garrison. Deploys on any Death Star site except for the docking bay. So in this case, you're going to deploy it on the detention block corridor. Target one of your spies or leaders not on the Death Star. So you can target Commander Luke, who's going to be over at the Hoth docking bay. When target reaches the Utini effect, draw Destiny, and you can release that many captives from the detention block corridor. So as long as you don't have a 0 in your deck, because you're going to start 4 of your 6 locations, you're going to pull the Hoth docking bay so you can play Luke. So as long as it basically just says draw Destiny and release Leia. So it's a little bit easier to actually use Cell 2187 with Luke than it is to use 8d8 to free her. And then because you're doing this Echo Base Garrison, we also play Special Edition Wedge, Hobbie, and Zev. And then we play some Rogue Speeders. I don't play Rogue 4. You could put Rogue 4 in here if you really wanted to with Hobbie, but usually Hobbie's just going to sit in with either Wedge or Zev in their speeder. Similarly, you could not play Rogue 2 and play Rogue 4, and Zev would sit in there so that you have ability 4, because these can hold 2 pilots. So Luke can draw Destiny on his own because he's ability 4, but Wedge, Zev, I mean, it's really up to you how you want to build that. I just play 3 speeders. You really don't need more than that. But Luke then sits in Rogue 1. Zev is in Rogue 2. Wedge is in Rogue 3. And they're just kind of sitting at the docking base going back and forth. The actual way, like if you go with whichever way you go with, Cell 2187 or 8d8 to free Leia, you now have to walk Leia to the Death Star docking bay, then to Yavin docking bay, then to the war room. And Darkseid's going to be trying to kill her, right? They're going to put characters down to battle her, sniper her, capture her, force lightning her, etc. So ideally, rather than have this take 3 turns to move her, you're trying to flip as fast as you can. So one of the ways that you're doing that is with lift tubes. So these can deploy to any interior mobile site, which both of your Death Star sites are interior mobile sites. And you have lift tube escape. So if opponent just initiate battle, one of your lift tubes present may move as a react. As part of a react, you can embark onto the lift tube and move. But really, you play the lift tube here. Well, I guess you play the lift tube to the docking bay. So then 8d8 deploys to Yavin 4. You docking bay transit 8d8. He gets onto the lift tube. The lift tube moves. The next turn, he stays on the lift tube. Your opponent can't battle him or sniper him or force lightning him or you're beating him or any of that kind of stuff. He can then get out during the move phase, free Leia. Leia can get into the lift tube. Then the lift tube can move. Then she can get into one of your speeders that you deployed. Then the speeder can docking bay transit. Then she can get out of the speeder and walk into the war room and flip your objective. So basically, it's a 1-turn flip. Ideally, you should be looking to set that up on like turn 2 or turn 3 at the latest, depending on how much you drew, what you drew. But you should be able to, once you find Echo Base Garrison, you should be able to find all the pieces you need. Once you flip your objective, that's where this thing becomes really good. So this is wall this side up. For opponent to initiate a force drain, they must use +1 force. During battles, opponents' unique characters, vehicles, and starships lost from table or placed out of play, which means they can never play another copy of that card. So if they lose Vader, he goes out of play. They can't play another one. So hunt down, bring him before me, Emperor, Mara Jade, IG-88, Boba Fett, Jabba, et cetera, all go out of play if they're lost, and they can never be played again. Leia adds 1 Battle Destiny, so she adds 2 to 4 strains wherever she's at, and now she's going to also add a Battle Destiny. Attrition against opponent is +2, so if you do battle, even if you were to draw a 0, which is impossible with this deck because all your zeros are going to be out of the deck, your opponent automatically is going to be losing something based on attrition, and then because if it's a unique card, it goes out of play. Imperials, Dark Jedi, and Imperial starships lose all immunity to attrition. So Executor, no immunity. Vader, no immunity. Emperor, no immunity. So they are losing all their immunity. Your attrition is plus, and their characters are going out of play. This card is amazing on the backside. Flip this card if Leia is captured. Place out of play if Leia is lost from the table. But this Prisoner 2187 again said, your objective cannot be placed out of play, and if Leia is not on table, you flip it rather than place it out of play. So when you flip it, all you'll have to do to flip it back is play the 0-cost Leia to the Yavin 4 docking bay and walk her back over Yavin 4, and it'll flip. Your Echo-based Garrison also pulls out Bacta Tank, so you can just, if she's lost, you'll flip your objective. You put her on Bacta Tank. She deploys for 0, so you pick her up for 0 force, and you can play her for 0 force and move her back in. So once you get her released and moving, it's kind of hard for Darkseid to do a lot of anything to her. But because of the nature of having to move her across 3 sites, it gets very difficult to do, especially since Darkseid's going to be trying to put as many characters to the docking bays as they can so that they can either stop, if they can stop her somehow, they can kill her. So that's why you have things like dodge, 2 copies of It's a Trap, use 3 force to cancel a battle or cancel sniper, narrow escape to run away, lift tube escape to get back on the lift tube and react away, rebel barriers to block them from coming down. You also have fallen portal because you have a bunch of docking bays. This card makes their characters, so if you flip and this card makes their characters lost, they go out of play rather than lost with fallen portal. And then you have some cards to support your T-47s, maneuvering flaps, and 1 copy of Attack Pattern Delta, because that's going to be your main attack force, is going to be your 3 speeders. Really, Han is there to be a pilot on a speeder with, ideally Luke or Han and Chewie can pilot a speeder. And then Obi-Wan is just in there for hit and run. So when you do flip, you can play Obi, hit somebody, that character is going to go out of play. Draw Destiny, your attrition's +2. Another character is going to go out of play. You put him in the back of the tank, pick him up, play him again, put him in the back of the tank, pick him up, play him again, et cetera, et cetera. So at a certain point, this becomes a battle deck. And so you have your draw, your fire to retrieve force that way. And then just a few other cards for good measure, 1 copy of On the Edge, so that if for some reason you freed Leia and they come to beat her down really bad, you can always edge her, name 7, she'll just die, put her in the back to tank, and then you can just move her, you can just deploy her to Yavin 4 docking bay and walk in and flip. Or you can just actually use it and, probably name 4. Sometimes you can put with lift tube escape, you can put one of your unoccupied lift tubes into your used pile and then track the 6 and then edge for 5 and retrieve 5 force, and then battle, withdraw their fire, retrieving you're on the edge, and kind of loop that way. But yeah, the only space package you have is 1 Lando and Falcon with a landing claw, so that you can satisfy battle order if you need to. Otherwise, it's just a deck built around getting Leia out and over to the war room and flip and then fight with speeders.
I like the inclusion of speeders. I hadn't really thought of this way to do. I actually have never successfully run this deck, so this is a fun twist on that.
I'll admit I've also never successfully run this deck because Leia dies on like turn 2 every game. This deck is some bad matchups. Bring him before me. You pretty much just cannot bring him before me. They play an Emperor for -2 to the docking bay, pull Force Lightning, drop Vader and a Saber, and just sit there and hold You Are Beaten and Force Lightning and Young Fool. Leia has to move. She does have to get out and into vehicles, so there is a point where they can just like Force Lightning her, or You Are Beaten, then she can't move, then sniper her or battle her or do literally anything to Leia and then play Young Fool and just place her out of play. When Leia goes out of play, the whole deck just kind of crumbles apart.
How do you pull the lift tubes out? Is there a way of getting those out?
Lift tube escape. Or search your reserve deck and take one lift tube into hand.
I've never really quite gotten lift tubes, so this has been helpful to understand how they work. It's like always been confusing.
So yeah, this Bring Him Before Me is a very difficult matchup for you. Hunt Down is also probably pretty tough. Yeah, I think honestly, a lot of decks are going to be kind of tough for you to beat. Different types of alien scum decks are going to be hard. They're going to be constantly trying to battle you. Probably the decks your ROPS is going to be very difficult for you to beat. There's not really a lot of good matchups for you with Rescue the Princess. It's a fun thematic deck. So if you're looking for something a little bit more casual and you're not going to try and go 6-0 on the retro league, but you just want to have something that's like a good deck, but it's not going to be amazing. Rescue the Princesses. Something like this. There's some cards you could flex in and out of here. Like I said, Rogue 4, maybe some more ships, different set of characters. There's other ways to avoid battles that you could play. A Hoojix or something like that might be good. But that's pretty much it.
Cool. Well, thanks for walking us through that deck. Please leave your thoughts and how you'd run this deck in the comments, all that sort of good stuff. I think that's all we have for today. So we'll catch everybody next time.
Sounds good.